Roman Reigns destroys CM Punk WWE Raw, March 10, 2026. Full highlights. CM Punk is not talking his way out of what Roman Reigns did to him on March 10, 2026. And I want to be extremely specific about that statement because every word in it is doing work that the wrestling conversation needs to engage with seriously before we get into the full breakdown of what happened on Raw. CM Punk is the best talker in professional wrestling. This is not a contested position. It is the consensus assessment of people who have watched professional wrestling at the highest level across generations, including the people who disagree with everything else CM Punk has ever said or done. The ability to construct a verbal argument that is simultaneously entertaining, psychologically devastating, logically coherent, and personally targeted is Punk's most specific and most irreplaceable gift. It has been the foundation of every major program he has been in. It has won him fights that the physical dimension of those fights would not have won for him. On March 10, 2026, on Raw, Roman Reigns answered that gift with something that does not respond to verbal arguments. Something that is not accessible to the specific kind of counter that CM Punk's verbal gifts provide. Something that Punk's rhetorical brilliance, his psychological sophistication, his 20-plus years of experience using language as a precision weapon in professional wrestling, none of that could prepare him for, and none of that could mitigate once it was deployed. Roman Reigns destroyed CM Punk on Raw on March 10. Not damaged, not hurt, not produced the kind of physical consequence that a competitive match or a targeted ambush produces. Destroyed. The specific, sustained, categorically different word that describes what happens when the filter Roman Reigns normally operates behind came down completely, and what remained the uncontained, personally motivated, accumulated fury version of the tribal chief was given access to the person who had been its target for months. The destruction on March 10 was not the opening of a war. It was not the escalation of one. It was the expression of everything that has been building since CM Punk first spoke Roman Reigns' name with intent to diminish. And the question that the wrestling world cannot answer, yet the question that only WrestleMania can answer, is whether expression is the same as conclusion. Every word of this breakdown matters. Stay to the end. Raw on March 10, 2026, did not arrive from nowhere. The destruction that Roman Reigns delivered to CM Punk on this specific night is the product of a specific accumulation of weeks of verbal campaign, of the specific events of February and early March, of the March 8 attack that we documented, of the growing awareness within Roman's operational psychology that the patience was not indefinitely sustainable. But March 10 is also specifically after the events of the preceding days, after the Og bloodline reunion, after GUSO's hospital room, after the political and personal turmoil that the Bloodlines week had contained. Roman Reigns arriving at Raw on March 10 was not arriving as the composed, patient, strategically operating tribal chief who had been managing the CM Punk situation through calculated restraint. He was arriving as someone who had been through a week, who had sat beside an injured family member, who had watched institutional decisions damage what the Bloodlines reunion had cost to build, who had been carrying the weight of March's accumulated events in addition to the months of Punk's campaign, who was, in the specific language of what Roman Reigns is, underneath the tribal chief character, at the end of a particular kind of rope. CM Punk, whose intelligence about the people he programs with is one of his most consistent competitive tools, may have understood this, may have known what the week had cost Roman, may have chosen March 10 specifically because of what the week had cost Roman, because a Roman Reigns at the end of a particular rope is a different competitive proposition than a Roman Reigns at his most composed, and the version of the Roman Punk story that Punk has been trying to tell requires the specific version of Roman that operates from the emotional rather than the strategic. If Punk chose March 10 deliberately because of what Roman's week had cost him, then whatever happened to him on Raw is the specific, precise, operational consequence of correctly identifying a vulnerability and then discovering that the vulnerability was a trap. Because Roman Reigns, with everything he was carrying on March 10, was not the emotionally compromised version of the tribal chief that Punk's strategy was designed to face. He was the completely unfiltered version. And the completely unfiltered version is not a version that CM Punk's strategic framework was built to handle. Let's go through the destruction on March 10 with the granular attention it requires. Because the word destruction is not sufficient on its own. The specific content of what destruction looked like, the sequence, the sustained quality, the specific choices Roman made in how the destruction was delivered contains information about what Roman Reigns is in this chapter of his story and what it means for the WrestleMania confrontation that everything has been building toward. The first point of contact between Roman and CM Punk on March 10 was not where anyone in that arena expected it to happen. Roman's movement through the space, the specific path he took, the specific moment he chose to close the distance between himself and Punk demonstrated once again that the tribal chief's most fearsome quality is not his physical capacity but his ability to arrive at the place he needs to be before the person he is arriving for has had adequate time to process the arrival. When contact was made, the first exchange communicated everything, not through the complexity of what was done but through its completeness. Roman Reigns hitting CM Punk on March 10 had none of the controlled, precision quality of the strategic physical actions that have characterized the Bloodline era's most calculated moments. it had everything of the other thing. The unmettered, uncontrolled, this is personal not tactical thing that March 10th's Roman Reigns was carrying. What followed was sustained in a way that the people in that arena processed differently from the way they process standard wrestling violence. The crowd response, the specific quality of noise that filled the arena as Roman continued, had an unusual quality in it. Not the scripted, expected reaction of an audience responding to a planned escalation in a known story. The slightly different quality of an audience watching something happen that they understand is real in a way they cannot fully articulate. The slightly different quality that professional wrestling arenas produce when what is happening in front of them has crossed from performance into something closer to expression. Roman Reigns on March 10th was expressing everything. The months of Punk's words landing in the specific internal places they were aimed at while the composure held. The week's events and their costs. The specific, personal, non-transferable rage of someone who has been told publicly, repeatedly, in front of audiences designed to receive the message that what they are is less than what they believe themselves to be. The physical expression of all of that, directed at CM Punk on March 10th, is what destruction looks like from the most powerful man in professional wrestling when he is no longer operating from the place that moderation is possible. The production team mobilized. Officials arrived. Multiple waves of intervention were required to produce any meaningful separation. Each wave accomplished some measure of the physical separation the situation required while communicating through the effort it required that the situation was beyond what single interventions are designed to manage. When the separation was finally complete, when the space between Roman Reigns and CM Punk on March 10th had been established at a width that the production team was prepared to defend, what the cameras found was the most complete image of the Roman Punk story that 2026 had yet produced. Roman Reigns standing in that space, not breathing hard, not showing the physical expenditure of what had been delivered. In the specific, disturbing stillness of someone who has expressed something and achieved nothing close to the expression's complete resolution, who has released some of what needed releasing and still has most of it. CM Punk in the condition that the destruction produced, not performing the aftermath, simply in it. The full highlights of March 10th are the full expression of what this feud has always been building toward, and WrestleMania is where the expression is finally given a result. Here is the analytical work that March 10th's destruction demands from anyone following this story with the attention it deserves. The destruction confirms something that CM Punk's campaign against Roman Reigns has been designed to confirm, but that confirming has specific consequences that Punk's strategy may not have fully accounted for. Punk's argument, stated and restated across months of promos, targeted with increasing specificity at Roman Reigns' specific vulnerabilities, is that Roman Reigns' dominance is structural rather than individual. That the tribal chief without the bloodlines architecture is a different and fundamentally lesser competitive proposition. That somewhere beneath the composure and the strategic mastery and the institutional support is a man whose most honest competitive expression is driven by emotion rather than strategy, and who therefore has a floor that individual competitive intelligence can reach. March 10th confirmed that floor exists. The completely unfiltered Roman Reigns that the destruction expressed is exactly the version of the tribal chief that Punk has been arguing is underneath everything else. It appeared exactly as advertised, driven by emotion, unmediated by strategy, expressing accumulated personal feeling through physical action without the usual filtering mechanism. The confirmation is real. The argument is proven. But here is what Punk needs to understand now that he did not fully understand before. The floor exists, and it is exactly what he said it was. And the floor, unfiltered and fully operational, destroyed him on March 10th. The argument that the emotionally driven Roman Reigns is the more beatable version is the argument that Punk's strategy depends on. The argument that removing the strategic filter makes the tribal chief less dangerous rather than differently dangerous. And March 10th has produced direct, empirical, in-your-body evidence of the specific danger the emotionally driven version presents. The emotionally driven Roman Reigns is not easier to beat. He is harder to survive. Because strategy can be countered with strategy. Intelligence can be outmaneuvered by intelligence. But raw, accumulated, personally motivated fury delivered by someone with Roman Reigns' physical gifts operating without any moderating constraint is not something that counter-strategy addresses. It is something you have to be physically capable of absorbing while your own competitive ability searches for the opening that takes it down. CM Punk can absorb things. His competitive resilience is extraordinary and documented. But March 10th's evidence of what absorbing the emotionally unfiltered Roman Reigns costs makes the question of whether he can absorb enough of it to find the opening at WrestleMania the most genuinely uncertain question in WWE right now. WrestleMania is days away. And everything that March 10th produced, the destruction, the confirmed existence of the emotional floor, the evidence of what that floor costs to absorb, has clarified the WrestleMania stakes in a way that makes the match between Roman Reigns and CM Punk the most genuinely uncertain major match on the card. Because the usual analytical frameworks for this match, the experience edge, the bloodline's numerical advantage, the verbal and psychological dimension that Punk brings as his most reliable competitive tool, all of them are relevant. None of them are determinative. None of them produce a confident prediction in either direction because March 10th introduced the specific variable that the existing frameworks cannot fully integrate. What version of Roman Reigns arrives at WrestleMania? If the strategically composed tribal chief arrives, the patient, calculating, filter operational version who deploys everything the bloodline provides with methodical precision, then the match is a specific kind of contest with specific analytical advantages on specific sides. If the emotionally unfiltered version of Roman Reigns arrives, the version that March 10th produced, that the accumulated weight of Punk's campaign and the week's events and everything March has cost Roman is continuing to build, then WrestleMania is a different kind of contest. One where the physical expression is more complete and the strategic management is less reliable and the outcome is genuinely more uncertain than any clean analytical model can predict. CM Punk going into WrestleMania knows both of these possibilities exist, has experienced the second one directly, and is going to have to determine, in the days between now and the biggest event of the year, whether the strategy that produced the March 10th destruction is the strategy that WrestleMania requires or whether a different strategy, one that accounts for what March 10th confirmed about what the emotionally unfiltered Roman Reigns is what survival and victory at WrestleMania actually demands. That determination and whatever CM Punk decides in the days between March 10th and WrestleMania is the most important decision being made in professional wrestling right now. Before the comments open, one more dimension of March 10th that the full highlights reveal and that the broader analysis needs to address. The bloodline state heading into WrestleMania. Roman Reigns operating as emotionally unfiltered as March 10th's destruction revealed is not the optimal state for a faction whose effectiveness has always depended on the tribal chief's strategic composure keeping the faction's operations coherent and directed. Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu operating at Roman's direction is the most physically formidable factional deployment in WWE. The Og bloodline adding emotional weight and competitive depth to that foundation produces the most complete bloodline configuration in the faction's history. All of that is true and all of that is relevant to WrestleMania. But the tribal chief's composure, the specific, iron discipline composure that has always been the intelligence directing those physical resources in the most effective possible direction, is the most critical element of the bloodline's operational system. And March 10th produced evidence that the composure is under the most significant internal pressure it has faced in the entire bloodline era. Roman winning at WrestleMania with the bloodline fully operational behind him while his own composure is at its most compromised is a match situation that the people who follow the story most carefully are watching with the specific attention that the difference between a dominant victory and a complicated one provides. WrestleMania is almost here. The stakes have never been clearer. Roman Reigns destroyed CM Punk on Raw on March 10, 2026. The emotionally unfiltered tribal chief appeared in full, and the wrestling world has been processing what that appearance means for WrestleMania ever since. I need every take in the comments immediately. Does March 10th's destruction make you more or less confident in CM Punk's ability to survive Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and what specifically does your answer rest on? Is the emotionally unfiltered Roman Reigns more or less beatable than the strategically composed version, and does March 10th prove what you thought or change what you thought? And the question that defines where this community stands heading into WrestleMania when Roman Reigns and CM Punk are in that ring on the grandest stage of them all, which version of Roman Reigns shows up, and is that the version that wins or the version that loses? Drop everything in these comments. Share this video immediately with every wrestling fan you know, because the March 10th destruction is the most complete statement the Roman Punk feud has made ahead of WrestleMania, and this breakdown is the most thorough analysis of what it means. Subscribe to Wrestling News CC and activate every notification. Roman Reigns destroyed CM Punk on March 10, 2026. The filter came down completely. And what was underneath it, all of it, fully expressed, is what WrestleMania has to contain. The only question left is